Let's see if I remember how to do one of these. Hi, my name is Leah. I go by Eventual Knits on YouTube, but I am Miss LJV on Instagram, and I think Eventual on Ravelry. Yeah. So, it's been a long time. A while. I meant to check when the last time I did a podcast episode was. I want to say that I did an episode on maybe my baby knits, or maybe I meant to and I never did. I think I only did one episode while I was pregnant, maybe two. I can't remember. But yeah, so welcome to my podcast. I think I'm going to be changing the format of my podcast. Not a ton, just more casual. I think before I used to follow a very specific routine of like what I knit, what I am knitting, things that I've acquired in life and stuff like that. And I think I just want to keep it a little bit more casual. And I haven't been acquiring a ton of new stuff over the last few years anyway, depending on how you look at it. So yeah, I'm gonna just start with talking about the fact that, yeah, I had a baby in April, and he is now almost 5 months old, and he's taken up all of my life and time since then. And it's really funny because I was very staunchly childless for a long time. Now, I wasn't always like that. My parents had me when they were young, and so I grew up thinking that I loved having young parents because all of my friends had old parents, and I felt more like my parents were relatable. And so I always thought I was going to have kids young as well. And then when I met my life partner, I told him these desires. We were 20 and 21, and he was like, pump the brakes, let's just wait a little bit. And then sometime, actually I think within a year, 2 years of us dating, I had watched tons of documentaries and read a bunch of stuff and about labor, delivery, pregnancy, all of that stuff, and I was like, no. I don't want any of this. Why? I don't want kids. So anyway, I had many years, more than a decade of that, of being like, nope, I'm just going to be the cool aunt. I'm not going to have any children. And then, honestly, it was in 2020, I think, when we first started like talking about, like maybe we do want kids. And yeah, to just constant conversations over a couple years to see if this was something we wanted, and then we decided to go for it. And I'll be 36 in November, so it was one of those things where I personally just don't want to be older than my 30s having a kid. So anyway, we had the kid. And I will say that I had very severe postpartum depression for the first 4 months. I'm doing a lot better now because I have been doing therapy and eventually started taking medication, and I have an extremely involved and supportive couple of people in my life who really saved me. So I just want to put that out there, that if you have gone through, are going through, are worried about what you might go through after having a kid, just know that there are resources out there. And particularly would like to shout out to the maternal mental health crisis line that really saved me as well. And so I just want to say, like, people in my life told me multiple times, repeatedly in those first couple months, multiple times a day, even sometimes, it will get better, you know, with the baby and how you feel and whatever. It just might not be immediate, and you might need additional help, which again, I did end up needing additional help. But the baby does change. I did not know anything about newborns and how I would cope, and I just expected to cope better than I did by a lot. And now he's almost 5 months old, and things are so different than they were. And he's different, but he's not insanely different. So it's just a process. But I truly feel like we've like come out the other side of something major. And you know, my partner and I have been like the best team. I could not ask for a more wonderful partner. So I'm very excited to continue life. You know, when we were talking about having a baby, we were talking about having a child, not having a baby. So we do recognize things now that we are going to miss of the baby stage, but we are greatly looking forward to the actual human that our child is going to become. So anyway, so that's like the big thing. And I just want to point out to people who don't like babies and don't like hearing about babies, turns out that when you have a small baby, it's not that necessarily that you are obsessed with that baby, it's just all you get to focus on, and therefore it's all you have to talk about. I just want to point that out because that was something I was not aware of before I had a child. So yeah, when people ask me questions, a lot of times it's just talking about the baby because that's what I experience in most of my day. But I have been able to do some knitting and crochet. I guess I'll just sort of jump right in. Should I do what I finished? Let's do what I finished. So one thing that was really important to me and Steve, my partner, my fiance, we're getting married next year, it was that we made time for the other person to get space and do a hobby, do something that they like. So for me, obviously that was knitting, but typically I used to knit at home. In the beginning, home did not feel like a safe space for me. So he encouraged me very much to get out, go knit somewhere that makes me feel peaceful and safe. So I started working on a shawl when I was doing all of those little bits of hours here and there to knit. And I ended up making a study hall shawl. I believe this is by Sarah Shira, who does gnomes or something. This is a free pattern, and it is a two skein shawl. I mean, obviously you can use however many you want. It's a triangular wrap. I made a ton of mistakes. It was in the early days of after giving birth, and I had a really traumatic birth with a C-section, and therefore was extremely drugged up, and I hurt a lot, not from the C-section though, from the labor in my body. I pushed for 7 hours. I don't think hospitals let you push that long. I did a mostly home birth. And my baby was 10 pounds. So, the shawl. Oh, yes. So my brain was not where it normally is after I gave birth. And so I made tons of mistakes. But you know what? I didn't care. I still don't care. It's a beautiful shawl. You can't, honestly, unless you're like you can see one major mistake right here. I held the yarn on the wrong side of the work for this little section, and that was purely just me bungling the instructions. Like I know how stitches are supposed to work, but I did not in that row. There's a few small things like that. I messed up some of these squares also, like here. I just had the yarn on the wrong side of the work at one point. But anyway, it's lightly textured. Got some little checkerboards. got some, I don't even know what you'd call this. I can't remember. It was called like it was like SANQ something. That was the section. So then it has some striping, and I really like the spine of this shawl and the like final row detail of it being that opposite color again. This looks pretty similar to the shawl that is shown in the pattern, but I really liked that color contrast with the blue and I think it was a much more navy. Mine's a little bit lighter. It's like this color. Oh, not quite as bright as that, but what it's showing up on camera, it is like more of this color, more of a slate blue, I'm not sure. And then a silvery single ply yarn. I'm trying to remember what yarns these were. The blue, I think, is a Sun Valley. And the silver, I think, is Camel City, maybe? Camel City fibers. And they were just 2 single skeins that I had that I decided to use. And it's super soft. I love it. I love the size. I love myself a big shawl. And I was super proud when I finished it because it showed that I could still come back to myself sometimes, even after having a child. So this is a very special project. Another thing that I finished that I have been literally working on for more than 2 years, or about 2 years, was a Grow-Teen by Carolyn Dick of C-Dick Designs. And I made a Grow-Teen in the past from a random skein that I had that I think was a light fingering, because it came out so much smaller than this one, and it was much more of like an ascot or a small scarf, and this one is just like a proper single skein shawl. I really like it because I don't have very many yarns that are as highly variegated as this in my stash, and because it's like, what do you do with them? And so this is a really good use of it. And Grow-Teen is just simple linen stitch, and it's so easy to take on the go. And the reason why I was working on it for 2 years was because I had it as my car knitting. Sometimes would take it into, waiting rooms for appointments or something like that. And so I only, for the most part, worked on it in the car. And I finally finished it, and I was very proud to finish it. Yay, Grow-Teen. Now I'm getting fibers all up in my nose. Another thing I finished, so our house is a split level. We have 2 bedrooms upstairs and 1 finished bedroom downstairs. The other one is not finished because we use that as our cat box room, and there's no point in finishing it until the cats die or we move. We had kept all of our plants, or the majority of our plants, in what is now our baby's room. And when he was born, we realized we couldn't keep the plants in there, largely because we needed the space. And so the plants now are out in our sort of dining room area, and we can they're primarily on like a tall, narrow shelf that I can only use basically half of, because one of my cats likes to pull down and eat plants and then throw up everywhere. So we have to only use like shelves that he can't reach. And that left several shelves bare. And I thought, well, why not just make some plants? So I took one day and I learned how to crochet a little amigurumi, a little succulent. Now, this took me a while, several hours, but I'm very proud of what I came up with. And then I took a little bit of blush or eyeshadow, I think it was blush, and put it on the edges to give it a little bit of depth. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't really know how I feel, I crocheted a little bottom on it and just stuck it in some little glass bead things from Michael's Joann's. I need to buy one more like set so I can fill it all the way up. But please appreciate. I'm so proud of this, and I am excited to be able to crochet some more. Yeah, that was very fun. I don't know off the top of my head who made the pattern. I think it was free. I'm not 100% sure, but it's all up on my Ravelry. I'll try to remember to put links to it. That was fun. That was yay. And the last thing, so I mean, all of this has been finished, not necessarily started. I mean, the succulent was started now, or like since April. No, please stop. The shawl was, the study hall shawl was started and completed since April, and Grotine was started a long time ago but finished. A lot of it was worked on since my baby was been born. But the last thing that I have finished, I am wearing. I bet you've been waiting for me to talk about what I'm wearing because it is so catchy. I am wearing the rainbow sweater by Yelly Knits, or yeah, I think it's Yelly Knits now that I'm thinking of it, but Yelly anyway. And they released this pattern a long time ago, not that long ago, but long enough ago. And I have always wanted to knit it. Sorry, I have a cat that's really, and it is knit in DK. And you start, oh, here, let me show you. You start with this little half rainbow here, and then you start, it's a bottom up, and you start knitting the body without the ribbing all the way up to here, and then you work up to the center, and it has a really interesting construction for the sleeves. You do the sleeves before you do the top of the sweater. So it also has some rainbow on one of the cuffs, or one of the forearms. So I had shied away from this for a little while because in order to be more accessible and also to, I assume, ideally have the best fitting garment, Yelly includes a calculator that you can use for measurements, or they encourage you to use manual calculations as well to get the most perfect fitting sweater. That actually was difficult for me because I'm really consistent in my knitting, like what my gauge is. I don't know what my gauge is, but I know what kind of garments I get based upon the size that I choose. So before I gave birth, or before I was pregnant, I should say, my bust was about a 39, and my bust is quite a bit larger than, or had been quite a bit larger than my waist. And so therefore everything ends up a little bit loose on me, or looser than oftentimes patterns might call for. I'm okay with that. I don't like fitted things, specifically because if my body changes, then it doesn't fit anymore. And I want things that fit me in varying sizes. And actually, something I finished right before I gave birth, oh, maybe I'll go get it. I wonder if I showed it. I assume I didn't. I'm gonna go get it. You know, maybe I did show it, but I'm just gonna show it again. I finished at the end of my pregnancy the Spectre sweater, and it's so frustrating because it's really hard to capture the colors well. It's washing them out so bad. They're very bright. But my Ravelry picture in it was, of course, me wearing this with a gigantic belly. And since giving birth, I have worn it, and it still fits, just looser. And I love it. I love it like that. And this is also generally quite loose. But after giving birth, my body is extremely different than it used to be. I weigh about the same as I did before I got pregnant, but my body shape is incredibly different. And I know I'm less than 6 months up from having given birth, but it's like, I don't know how to really measure for my body anymore. Like, I don't know how people give birth and then wear jeans. Like, my body is not built for jeans. I mean, I don't like jeans anyway, but the point is I just don't fit in them at all. Like, my body shape is just does not work.
Doesn't work.
And what I really like about being able to make my own sweaters is that I make it fit my body at multiple sizes, and it just fits slightly looser or tighter, but still fits. And I really appreciate that about knitting and crochet. And so anyway, with the rainbow sweater, I knit it to the dimensions that I thought made the most sense. So my storage was full. Okay, hopefully I cleared enough space. Anyway, I didn't necessarily measure each individual body part because I just didn't think that was going to work out the way that I wanted it to. So typically I pick sweaters that are knit with ideally like 2 to 6 inches of positive ease, typically speaking. And then I just pick the size in there, like let's say 41 inches or something. And I know that my final sweater will probably be more like 43 or 44 because I knit more loosely typically than most designers. And that has always worked out great for me. So I was knitting this and I was adjusting as I went, and then for some reason, somewhere around here, it wasn't even, I think, that my stitch count got off. I think I gravely miscalculated something at some point, and so I kind of had to fudge it. But it's loose, but it ended up, like the way that I wanted it to. I also thought my sleeves were going to be horribly too long, but they ended up being a length that I really like, and I like, having them bunch up a little bit on my wrists. So whatever, it worked out really well for me, and it was so fun to knit. This yarn is the Lemonade Shop Bad Day, and so it's just, as you can see, little rainbow micro striping. I'm actually wearing this backwards. I think that like this is supposed to be on the side and the rainbow is supposed to be on the other side, but I alternated skeins and I was switching them on the other side, and so it doesn't look terrible, but you can definitely see a little where I crossed my skeins. And the rainbow striping yarn is, I think, just a cascade yarn. You can see that there is some bleeding between some of the colors. You can see it much more starkly on the little rainbow on the side. And that was because I let it soak far longer than I would ever normally wet block something. But the aforementioned baby, I started soaking it, had to deal with him for several hours because he's a baby that needs to be taken care of, and therefore the colors bled, and it is what it is. It's not a big deal. I think it's still one of the most gorgeous sweaters. I love wearing it. I'm probably going to cinch up the collar. I don't I don't mind like a slight boat neck, but I have very narrow shoulders, and I don't like when things fall off of my shoulders. I want it to sit, and so if it does stretch too much more, I'm going to either single crochet around or slip stitch around the outside, or I have something, someone said that they always knit in or include elastic, just like, I don't know if they hold together or if they go through after. I'm gonna do a little bit more research into that and see, but that would be another really fun option. So if you have tips for making the necklines a little bit narrower, let me know. Slip stitch has always worked really well for me, but just as a alternative option. That's all of the things that I have actually finished, which is, I think, great for the last several months. Like, I am so proud of myself, and I feel very into my hobby, very into knitting and making stuff. Yeah, so good. I am working on 3 things actively right now. One of them I can't show you. It's a secret test knit. Shows you where I feel like I'm at with my mental health, that I can do a secret test knit. for Telly Bean Knits. It's for the Halloween season, and it's going to be a really fun mystery knit along. She does a lot of cowls, and it is Halloween themed, and it will be, I believe, one clue a day for 13 days, ending, I believe, on Friday the 13th of October. So if you are interested in her cowls and her style of cowls, keep an eye out for that. It's been a really fun test knit so far. So yeah, can't show you though. And the next thing I'm working on is I started a little vanilla sock using Knit Circus yarn. I think this is like Electric Mayhem or Severe Stripes something. I'll put it somewhere in the description or on the screen to let you know what it is, but I'm just working on a little sock. It's trying to find where the ball went. It ends on a yellow, whatever, gray. So fun. So yeah, I was just knitting top down. Right now it looks like a rolled cuff, but I'm planning on sewing. I'm planning on folding it over and sewing in the cuff just to do something different. And then I love slip stitch and a heel flap and gusset. It just fits really nicely on my foot like a glove, and yeah, coming up really nicely. Oh, I have 4 projects. I am also working on a second turtle dove, which is residing in my Black Pearl Magic bag. I bought this a while ago in like a mystery sort of grab bag thing, and I do really like it. I did purchase her collab with, I want to say it's with Cat Sandwich, for an advent in December, of course. And it comes with a bag, and it's not, I don't think it's a full advent. I don't even think it's a half advent. I think it's something unique. I have to remember the details. I bought it a while ago, but it is not a traditional advent, but I'm very excited for the collaboration between Black Pearl Magic and Cat Sandwich Fibers. Cat Sandwich is the person who this yarn is from. Anyway, turtle dove. So I made a turtle dove a couple years ago. That was my Sweater in a Day podcast, and I am working on a second one in green. That one was in maroon, and I'm making it very similar to my first one. So again, I only did a couple inches for the collar. The collar, I think, in the main project is like 4 inches or something, and I just did a couple. And then I am done with the body, and now I need to start on the sleeves. So on my maroon one, I did half sleeves, and so they come to like here, and then I usually wear a long sleeve underneath it, usually with like the finger things. And I think for this one, I'm going to go for full sleeves. Unfortunately, that means that I definitely didn't buy enough yarn. So I went back to my old project, and in the description, I say that it was 5.5 skeins of Knit Picks Wonder Fluff. But in the project details, I say it's 6.5 skeins. So I don't know which one's correct. And either way, I'm sure I only bought 6 skeins, because if I shouldn't say either way, but I feel like in my head, when I purchased the skeins, I only purchased 6. So I don't know for sure, because I've just sort of been grabbing skeins as I go, not thinking I was going to run out. But then when I saw the two different numbers, and then thinking I'm going to do full sleeves, I was like, how much did I do? I don't know. So I'm probably going to have to order more. It's okay if they're different dad lots, whatever. It's gonna all blend together. I love Knit Picks Wonder Fluff in this pattern. I could make, this is one of the few patterns that knits up really quick. I think looks really nice on me, is super comfortable, wearable in a lot of different situations, and affordable. right? Like what, like $60 tops or something for this sweater for me, for my size. This one I want to say is like 14 inches of positive ease is what it's like designed for. So anyway, this is a perfect sweater, again, for someone whose body has completely changed, and who knows what will happen in the next year, whether it will change more, probably will. And yeah, I'm looking forward to wearing it and really loving it. It'll definitely be done soon. I just have set it aside for the mystery knit along test, because that's due really soon. It's due on the 20th. I only have a couple clues left, so yay. The last thing is, I might have shown on the very last podcast I did, but I have been working on a temperature blanket for my baby for his birth year. So I have actually overall been relatively caught up, generally speaking, or it's like easy to catch up. I'm doing rows of 17, maybe 18, I can't remember, but 17 or 18. And so it is a lot of days, and I liked, because I'm doing basically continuous join as you go, it's crochet. I wait until I have all of those 18, and it's sort of like the way that I do the row, it's backwards. So it's going from right to left. And so I have to wait till I have 18 to do. But here is what I have so far. So starting in this corner is January 1st. Every month is separated by a white center. This is like mini granny squares, so it's only 2 rows of granny stripe or granny stitch. And so we have January, and February starts here, and then March, then April, and then this day with the white square is the day that my baby was born. That would be April 16th was when he was born. And then we very quickly get into May and June and July. So I think I am as caught up as end of July. It's been a very hot summer. Like, this red signifies so I'm doing temperature averages, the average temperatures. Okay. And this average red is 80s. Like, that means that oftentimes the temperature was 95 or above for the hot that it hit that day. This is wild. So anyway, it's been a hot summer, but we had very little like mid temperatures, and then the like deepest blue, I think this is really cold. We had a couple of really cold days, but I think that's it. Mostly it's been in like the 30s, average 40s, and then all of a sudden a lot of 70s and 80s. 70s, 80s, 60s. I'm loving how it's coming out so far. I cannot wait to give it to him, and just like have it as like a memento of the year that he was born. It's a nice quick crochet project. I can do a few circles here and there, and then I get my little pile of circles, and then I can add them. And I feel very proud that I've been able to keep up with it as someone who really struggles. Like, I don't know how people can just make a bunch of individual granny squares and then later connect them. That is so overwhelming to me. So I am glad that I am able to do a little bit at a time, and it's just like really pretty. I'm so pleased with the colors that I chose, and I'm happy to give it to my son as a gift. I think that is everything for everything that I'm working on and making. I haven't been acquiring a ton of new yarn, as I said, like a little bit here and there, but typically not so much. I'm not really on social media much these days, and I'm certainly not really looking at places that I might buy things from. Generally, at least not yarn related stuff typically. Like I do like going on and supporting the dyers and, you know, bag makers and other knitters that I do see on Instagram, for example, but really I am on social media less than an hour a day, and I like might go on for a minute or two to watch a couple people's stories and maybe do a quick scroll through the feed, or like you know, people that I have where it gives me a push notification when they post, like Michelle from My So-Called Handmade Life. Like I've just had her on a push for a really long time, and so whenever she posts, I like to go and see what she posted and then like her post, and then I close the app again. And part of that is due to I had been for a long time sort of pulling away from social media, and just sort of feeling burnt out on the increasingly sort of like consumeristic, capitalistic, like need for having to follow certain things to keep in the algorithm, and people, everything becoming a hustle, which respect, fine if that's what you want to do, but I just don't like the sort of commercialism feeling of it, the inauthenticity of it all. And so I just really started pulling away from that. And you can probably even see that in my podcast, where I started becoming more intense about following along with the way that things were sort of moving in relation to sort of crafting podcasts. And then I pulled way hard back from that. Yeah, I typically just I use Facebook really only to post monthly photos of my baby for family and people who don't see him very often. And yeah, I mean, it is interesting how I feel kind of isolated sometimes, or like I'm sad, like I'm losing friends, but it's just like not very healthy for me to, I just feel like, especially now that my life is not 100% my own anymore, I have to be very choosy in what I spend my time on, and it turns out that's not really social media, just scrolling in the loading times of my life, you know. That's not to say that I don't hate Instagram, I just don't really use it for the way that I used to. And I've always really enjoyed podcasting, and I love watching other people's knitting podcasts, especially the people who style theirs similar to mine, where they are just sort of slice of life things. And I was motivated to start recording again. One, you know, Steve always encourages me, and to Michelle from My So-Called Handmade Life, like, asked me about it, and it's like, yeah, I do want to. And actually, Lori from Lunar Knits, I don't think she actually knows who I am, but I've been watching her since 2020-ish, 2021 maybe. And I really like that, like, she just posted one where she was just chatting, saying that, you know, she's not in a very knit space in her life right now, and her life has been really focusing more on plants, which is also an interest of mine, so I don't even mind that happened. And I like the slice of life things so much more than trying to fill with like a topic, like top 10 this or whatever. I cannot think of something more boring than listening to someone try to tell me what's trending. I just like to know what's going on in people's lives, and part of that is like, you know, I think people might want to know what's going on in my life too, you know, and that's not fair. But I, for such a long time, journaled all of my life on LiveJournal. I have had a LiveJournal since 2003, and I had blogged on other back then. LiveJournal had codes. You needed a code in order to have a LiveJournal. So while I was waiting for my code, which was you can only do by referral, so I had to have a friend who gave me a code. Oh my god, sorry, so many fibers in my nose. Before that, I had a different blog on Blurdy, and one other one. What's the other one? There was another site even before that. But anyway, I've been journaling online for a long time, and I have been journaling less, you know, and I really like these sort of video diaries as well. Like, I think they're fun, they're a good documentation of things that I'm doing. In some ways, they're easier than trying to get photos into, you know, like my LiveJournal. And I've been burned in the past by online blogging, so I had a Greatest Journal for a long time. Then Greatest Journal like went defunct. Like they just like abandoned their servers, and I lost years of journal entries. And so now I keep my journal entries in two places. And so Dreamwith is the other place that I keep journal entries. But Dreamwith is so much less functional than LiveJournal. And therefore it's just harder to get photos on there anyway. But yeah, so that's basically what's been going on. Just being a parent, never thought that would ever be a thing for me. And I was at the farmer's market yesterday. We go to the farmer's market, or I go to the farmer's market for us every Wednesday to get burritos from this taco truck that we love. And I was standing in line thinking like, oh my God, if someone asks, do you have any children? I say, yes, one. That's crazy. It's just so different than I would have ever thought in my life. And yeah, so nothing major otherwise going on in my life, just working on knits, figuring out how a child fits into my life. I am currently working 3 days a week, still at my same job at university, in IT. But in October, I'll go back to full time. Right now, my baby is in daycare 3 days a week, and we're hoping to keep it that way as long as possible because, we have a mortgage. We have student loans coming due, which is the equivalent of a mortgage when we put them together. And now we have daycare, which is a third mortgage. So we have tons of money that is being lost that was not lost when we were dinks, dual income, no kids. So and the student loan forgiveness that fell through. So we're working on that, working on our debts super hard. I think I mentioned in previous podcasts that we were focusing on that, and we're still focusing on that. And our debts are basically student loans and mortgage. So we are working on getting those debts paid down so that we can be free of those shekels, and therefore spending is less. And working on one of the major things that we're working on is after the baby was born, there was so much going on, and so much physical healing and mental healing and stuff going on. Like, we've been eating out all the time, getting takeout, because the mental capacities, how do we have time? Like, we know that that's a fallacy, right? Like, going and getting food often takes the same amount of time as making food, but it's not as much mental energy. So we've been working on incorporating eating at home again. It makes us feel better, and it is not that difficult, and our baby's getting older and can tolerate more things. So that's another way that we're really going to be working hard to save money, is stop eating out so much. So that's been nice. It's been good. This is our first week of that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. We're truly hoping that we can keep him home those other 2 days a week. We both work from home. We both work in the same department, on the same team, but do very different jobs. So the hope is that we can sort of like alternate watching him for meetings. And our team is constantly like, why can't we see him? Unfortunately, on the days that I'm not working, that I'm home with him on Mondays and Fridays, he's awake, not when it would be a good time to bring him to like have to be on a Zoom call or whatever. So he's usually napping at like the best time. So anyway, my company is going to, or not my company, my team is going to have a lunch literally to just meet him. We're going to bring him to the campus and everyone have lunch and apparently meet the baby. So we'll see how that goes. That'll be fun. I hope you are doing well. Thank you so much for sitting with me for this, I assume 45 minutes to an hour. Yeah, it's great. I hope to be back more regularly with just sort of general updates on knitting and life and whatnot. Let me know if you have any questions or anything you want me to chat about. And thanks for watching. Bye.